I don't know when was the first time that we met. It was a long time ago, but,
I think we first met in Moscow at a circus while
That's
lecturing
exactly
at
it.
least 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
At a circus?
Yes.
Yes.
We were
you
taken
lecturing
out.
at the circus? Or
We
you
had just finished lecturing,
Yes.
and they took us out for a
No
night of
kidding.
revelry.
Yes.
And took all the veterinary speakers out.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I've heard very many. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say I met you at a circus in Moscow.
That's true.
You know,
It was
that's-
a very, very
It's
unique
unique.
beginning.
That's where we tend to meet. We tend to meet in
Strange locations.
in strange and exotic locations.
This is true. Veterinary speakers do tend to meet in interesting locations and sometimes under interesting circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for saying sorry. Media presents the Purr Podcast, the best podcast for feline medicine and surgery with tips, tricks, and updates for the entire veterinary healthcare team. If you're dying to know more about cats, keep on listening. Here are your hosts, Dr. Susan Little, famous cat vet and textbook author, and Dr. Jolle Kirpenstein, talented surgeon and social media geek.
Hello, this is Dr. Jolle Kirpenstein.
And this is Dr. Susan Little.
And Susan, who do we have as a guest today?
We have somebody with us that we've wanted to have for a long time, and you're just really hard to get.
I know.
Yeah.
It is so tough to get her in front of the microphone.
So we're very
because-
lucky. We've got
Yes.
Dr. Justine Lee with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. So honored to be featured.
Amazing Dr. Justine Lee.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.
No,
You're
I
welcome.
mean, I think I don't know when was the first time that we met. It was a long time ago, but,
I think we first met in Moscow at a circus
That's
while lecturing at
exactly
least
it.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
At a
yes.
circus?
Yes.
Yes.
We were
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 taken
you lecturing
out.
at the
Circus.
circus? Or
We
you
had
were-
just finished lecturing,
Yes.
and they took us out for a
No
night of
kidding.
revelry.
Yes.
And took all the veterinary speakers out, and there were...
Yeah, so I'm not sure I've heard very many. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say I met you at a circus in Moscow.
That's true.
You know,
It was
that's-
a very, very
It's
unique
unique.
beginning.
That's where we tend to meet. We tend to meet in
Strange
and
locations.
strange and exotic locations.
This is true. Veterinary speakers do tend to meet in interesting locations and sometimes under interesting circumstances.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think it is, when you're in the speakers, how do you call that?
What, our
Circuit.
bubble?
Yeah, circuit. Then you tend to meet at the same spots, but they're everywhere in the world.
Yes,
they are
everywhere in the world.
And so,
Yeah.
and I remember, the at that time going to Moscow was interesting. It was kind of difficult to get your visa and that sort of things. But when you're there, it just all falls away. So I mean, there's for me, the people, the veterinarians there, they were so passionate, and that's everywhere in the world.
Yes. Yeah, I've discovered that too. And they really liked my talks because I talked about how you can use vodka to treat ethylene glycol poisoning. So
Okay,
I know they had that.
All right, okay, let's go there. So,
very
how do you
appropriate.
use vodka to treat anti-glycol?
So
Antifreeze.
it is
Antifreeze.
important. Most people forget, but especially for cats, you only have 3 hours to treat an antifreeze poisoning.
Yeah.
If it's more than that, it's 100% fatality. And once they're azotemic, the prognosis is grave. And most of the time we use fomepizole or 4-MP, but it's gotten so cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
So a lot of vets will use ethanol instead. So it requires a lot of math, but that's why we took advanced calculus to get into veterinary school. But we have to be able to calculate it to a 7% ethanol and run it at a CRI to help inhibit the alcohol dehydrogenase from metabolizing into the toxic metabolites. But I always say you only use clear vodka. You only use clear. Some vets have said, can I use my rum-flavored Bacardi? No,
Raspberry.
you
raspberry.
cannot.
There's so many vodkas now.
Yes,
This is a
only
good
clear.
point.
Only the clear
Yeah,
one.
only
that
clear
is so
vodka.
cool. And only Justine, because I remember. So we have a lot of things to talk about, but the one thing I remember is that you are so when you talk, it's so practical. I love that
thanks.
part.
Thank
So
you.
and you really know how to grasp your audience.
It's because I was a C student at Cornell. and so...
And we talked about that.
Yeah,
Not
and-
that you were a C student, but in general that. So I was interviewed by Dave Nichol for his podcast. And one thing I said was, you are my inspiration of saying I was a C student and see what you can become with.
Oh, thanks. Thank
So-
you. It's interesting. I had to study really hard. I always joked I studied, 1.5 to 2 times harder than my classmates because physiology, anatomy, it just didn't come innately to me. And so it is actually interesting because a lot of vet students are shocked when they hear that I was a C student, but it made me realize, if I can teach while I'm lecturing and leave 1 or 2 clinical vignettes, that's going to help improve the quality of life in that patient. That's the most important thing. Yeah. And that's what you grasp when you're a C student, the important stuff.
And
I love that.
I think that's true, and it reverberates also back to what we talked with Beth Green about. She revolutionized, publications by focusing on the clinical message.
Yes, and what's clinically important.
And how to emphasize what's clinically important, and then fill it up with the rest.
Yes, I agree.
So
keep it real.
That's it. Keep it real. The one thing you need to remember from this 45-minute lecture.
Or what's the top 3? That's a good. I think it's a really good way to approach when we're trying to teach, whether it's vet techs or whether it's veterinarians, right? To keep your eye on the prize, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's I think of it. Keep your eye on the prize.
Yeah.
Do you have cats at home?
I do. So, interestingly enough, I've always been an advocate of having at least 2 cats. And right now I only have 1 cat. But my cat that I had since my internship, a cat named Seamus, who was an animal abuse case, had really severe squamous cell carcinoma, and so only got about 5-6 weeks with him. And he was 19 and a half, so I was pretty happy with that.
That's a great life.
But my other cat, Lily, was 13, and she died within 5 days of Seamus dying.
No way.
And I just happened to catch her collapse when I was cleaning her litter box. She was downstairs, and she had hemoabdomen secondary to suspect pancreatic adenocarcinoma and had pulmonary Mets. And so it was really hard to lose 2 cats. I knew I was going to euthanize Seamus, but
2 long time.
Yeah,
cats.
So that was really hard
quickly.
to lose them so quickly within a short period of time. But as my dear friend said, I guess they wanted to be together.
Well, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? It does make you wonder that relationship. Maybe were they good together?
Oh, they were great
there
together.
There you go. So it makes you wonder if that, that was not a sustaining thing to some degree, right?
So I only have 1 cat now. I adopted a new cat who is just a black, stray, female Minneapolis street cat. She's named Lola, and she's amazing. She's so tolerant of my 2-year-old toddler. So I joke she's the best cat ever.
Aww.
So we'll add another cat, but probably in a few years.
Yeah.
I like to space out their ages,
you know. Yeah. When the time is right.
And I also have 1 dog. So 1 black and white American Pit Bull Terrier mix, Australian Shepherd mix.
So you and I both have sort of Pit Bull mixed dogs.
That look very similar.
Which look very similar. I think they're like brothers from another mother or something,
but mine
right?
has longer legs.
That's right. Mine has short legs and yours has long legs. So, so I think we're bonded over the dogs. But this is a point for us to tell you there's a rule in this podcast.
Yes.
Oh,
I know.
The rule?
No saying the dog word.
Okay, that's a bottle right there. Thank you.
But I was just getting it out.
Okay.
But I think we'll give you like that little bit first because we talked about our dogs, so I think it's okay. But from here on in,
I haven't said the D word
no,
yet, so,
no.
So
but
I'm the recipient then.
Don't worry. He has before, so
he's
not.
Just keep an eye on it.
Yeah. So you have to be inventive now if you want to refer to another species.
I get it.
Yes.
But I also remember the D before the D that you have now. You had a very special relationship.
I did. I had, and everyone always says they have the world's best pet, right?
Yes.
And at one point in our life, we're going to have that one pet that's
I
believe and I always think it's life circumstance, but my previous dog was named Jamaica Plain, or JP, and it's named after the town where Angel is located, where you need a pit bull to cross the street safely. And he passed away at 13 of a suspect glio brain tumor, and I took him to CSU for stereotactic radiation therapy and actually got 13 months with him, but he was the world's best dog. He was very, very loyal, very protective, and had transitioned me through a lot of, life partners, different states that I moved in.
Right.
So, he was
I
my
think
one
you're
dog.
right. I think sooner or later in your life, almost most people, if we went out, we're at a vet conference now, if we, asked an audience, they'd all say, there is that one.
Absolutely.
It's not that you don't love the others.
Right.
But you'll all think of the one,
sure.
right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I had a little Georgia mini shepherd picked up in Georgia when I was a student.
A mini Shepherd.
A Georgia Mini Shepherd, just a mutt. But that's, I called her Georgia Mini Shepherd because everybody said, "Oh, what kind of breed do you have?" And I said, "It's a very specific breed, Georgia Mini Shepherd." And they were like, "Oh, that's interesting. Where do you get those?" And I said, "In Georgia, like Russia? No, Georgia in the U.S." And she was an amazing dog. There I go. And and she died when she was 18.
Oh my goodness!
So that bond that you have with, and through all those phases that you go, because she lived with me in Georgia, and then she went to Kansas, and then she went to Colorado, and back to Holland. I mean, it's just you.
We recently lost the family cat at age 19. And our kids don't remember a time without her.
Yeah, of course.
It's such they can live so long, right?
Yeah.
It's such a chunk of time.
Yeah.
And I've had clients say to me, "Oh, I've had that cat longer than I've had my husband, than my kids." They're that constant
for sure
through your life, so it can be pretty traumatic to lose them.
And it is really traumatic. And now we're getting to your profession too. Is if something really traumatic or an emergency happens, and you have to go to an emergency situation, and then we see you. Because that's your background.
Yes. Yeah. Emergency critical care.
And that's exactly it. And people are so stressed in that situation. How do you deal with that?
So it is hard. I will fully disclose, I work 2 days a week. So I work part-time at Animal Emergency and Referral Center in Minnesota. And for me, it's a great balance. I will say I definitely experienced compassion fatigue and burnout after doing ER for 20 years. And I always say if it gets to a point where you don't want to drive to work, you don't want to be there, it's time to take a break. And whether or not that's going to industry or just take a couple months off. But I love my job. And part of it is the interaction with the clients, knowing that I've been on the other side of the table hearing that my beloved pet had some type of cancer. And so I always try to be the best advocate for the pet owner and for the pet. And that still drives my passion for what I do. I work with a phenomenal team of, VTS specialists in anesthesia to critical care to a ton of amazing emergency vets to a ton of different specialists. So I feel very grateful. As much as a lot of people are super burnt out, I still love what I do. But I don't think I'd be able to say that if I did it 7 days a week, if I worked overnight. So I'm a huge advocate of self-care and really working on work-life balance in the process.
And you talk about that quite a lot. But before we go there, I think that's the same thing. At a certain point, because I was a surgeon, did a lot of emergency surgery, where you have to get up always at 3 or 2 a.m. in the morning. And I recognized in my last year before I switched over to go to corporate, I was not nice to myself. I was not nice to the client. I was like, why am I here? And recognizing the fact that I didn't enjoy that anymore, and what an effect it had on me, it was quite an eye-opener, I have to say. You talk about this to young people, to audience all over the world. I think that's what is the message that you give them?
Yeah, so I think I give them hope in that I was a C student. And I was never the type that thought I would be a small business owner. I never had, business training. My parents didn't have small businesses. And so I would like to feel like I'm imparting a passion that I tell vet students, even if you don't know what you want to do, you don't want to be a specialist, you don't want to do an internship, that's okay, but stay passionate with what you do, but set guidelines. If you know that after X amount where you're getting frustrated or using physical force with an animal, that's when it's time to take a break. And I will say, there are vets out there who say, oh, I would never work in industry. And I would say never poo-poo that. I took 5 years off, went into industry, loved it. And so that's the best thing about being a vet. We have nothing but options in our field.
We have many ways to be a vet.
Right. We can teach. We can,
you can work for government. You can work for corporate. Exactly. You can go to research.
So many options out there. Many options. That's what I love about my job.
The Win Feline Foundation has been funding cat health studies for 51 years. If you have a cat or have ever treated a cat, nearly everything we know was once funded by this nonprofit, totaling about $6.5 million. From understanding retroviruses, FELV and FIV, to more recently targeting gene defects responsible for HCM in the Ragdoll and Maine Coon breeds. The Win Feline Foundation Pet Memorial Program offers veterinary professionals an opportunity to reassure clients that their beloved cats have not been forgotten, and those dollars support health studies that benefit the lives of all cats. Contributions totaling $150 or more receive a certificate suitable for framing or display in your clinic. Imagine being able to treat kidney disease more effectively, using stem cell therapy to cure stomatitis, or drugs that treat FIP are actually within grasp. Consider your support and telling your clients about the Win Feline Foundation and a free newsletter at winfelinefoundation.org.
And then I always say, be a big dreamer, but at the same time, learn to let go. Our classic Myers-Briggs personalities is INTJ, so we're very hard on ourselves. And that's one important lesson I learned as a parent is learn to let go. Yeah. You're never going to be able to do everything perfectly. You're not going to be the same efficient veterinarian that you used to be, especially as a parent. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still make sure I'm doing a good job and I'm proud of what I've done, but do you have to make every single soap 2 pages long? Do you have to make the surgery report completely perfect? No. Cut yourself some slack. Get home. The more efficient you can be as a vet, the better your quality of life.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Exactly.
Isn't that, that's a nice phrase, right? Yes. And there's nothing wrong with good.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with good.
Yep.
Yeah. I like that concept. And I think it's important for young veterinarians to hear that because I think they leave school really feeling like there is one paradigm. Right. You know, and they have to fit into that paradigm. I also think it's very freeing to reach the point in your career when you can say, it's okay that I'm not perfect. It's okay that I don't know everything. And it's empowering to realize that as long as you say, okay, but I do know how to figure it out. Or I do know where to get the answer.
Exactly.
Really empowering. I think young vets need to hear that.
Yeah, cut yourself a break. Yeah. Learn to let go. Obviously work hard. And I always say, treat each pet the way you would if it was your own dog or your own cat. Oops. Yeah. You know, and I always say we're always taught the ivory tower way of doing things because that's the highest level, and we should be trained that way because it quickly unravels once we go into private practice. Yeah. And you'll find your way of practicing. You know, there's so many different ways, but I always say, if there's 5 different ways of doing things, there's no right, perfect way. You just have to learn to figure out the best way that works for you.
And it may be situational, you know, what works best in one situation. So I think that's another good message. There isn't always like one way to do it, right? And I think often young vets feel, okay, if I can't do it exactly the way I was taught in school, then it's not good enough. You know, I feel at fault. I'm mad at the owner because they can't do it. But in the end, we still have to meet the animal's needs. Yep. So if it's another pathway, maybe that's okay.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, really good messages.
Switching topics a little bit, the top 5 feline emergencies that you see in your practice.
Okay.
Yes. So interestingly enough, and I will say this because I'm also a toxicologist.
Yeah.
I will definitely add poisons to my top 5, but probably the bottom 5. The number 1 is always the vomiting cat, whether or not it's acute or chronic. And Susan knows. It's amazing how tolerant even veterinary professionals are of vomiting. Vomiting once a week for a cat is not normal. It needs a workup. Come on. Yeah. So
you're so right.
I see acute vomiting. Yeah. And usually it's pancreatitis or foreign body. It has to be something significant for them to bring in their cat.
Yes.
Because they have such a high tolerance for vomiting. The second thing I would say...
And it's not the cat, it's the owner.
Yeah. Of course. The second thing, sadly, in the intensive care unit, the critical care unit, is organ failure. Yeah. So I would typically say congestive heart failure with dyspneic cats that come in that need a thoracocentesis, that have underlying heart disease or underlying organ failure where it's, you know, acute and chronic renal failure. Yeah. The third thing would probably, unfortunately, be neoplasia. Yep. So I probably sadly diagnose 1 case of cancer every shift in a cat, which is frustrating. We definitely get some good ones. So trauma. So I'm an advocate of keeping cats indoors, but I live in a metro area, so I see a lot of trauma from cats that are hit by a car or attacked by a dog. Or shot by a bow and arrow, or depending on where you live, you know, attacked by a coyote. So trauma would be the 4th one. And then the 5th one is toxins. Even though 90% of the calls to ASPCA are dogs, and they're usually Labradors and mixed breed dogs.
Because they eat everything.
Exactly. 10% are cats. Yeah. Wow. And it's hard because of their altered glucuronidation in their liver, because of their altered hemoglobin, and because of their curiosity. When they do get into a poison, it can be quite significant. So lilies, Easter time.
There's a big one.
You know, and it's amazing what cats will eat. I once had a cat who ate 200 capsules of vitamin D.
No.
And I went to the owner. I went into the room with the owner. I was like, 200? With like this, no way, look on my face.
Serious?
And she brought me the bag. She's like, yep, all of them.
No way.
So, you know, there are some gluttonous cats out there.
Wow.
And the unique thing about cats is we know they vomit all the time at home.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to induce emesis,
they will not vomit.
They pucker up their lower esophageal sphincter and do not vomit.
Yeah.
So it can be hard to induce emesis in a cat. We only recommend dexmedetomidine or some type of alpha adrenergic.
Yeah.
It's also hard to tube a cat charcoal, but those would be the top 5 cases I see of cats.
So what is the attraction to lilies in cats?
It's any plant material.
Yeah.
So they're just so curious. They want to chew on anything. And so it's frustrating. I'm really passionate about educating owners about lily poisoning. There was a study that came out of Jaha about 4 years ago now. And don't quote me on exact numbers, but 60% of cat owners could identify a lilium or hemorrhacalis. They knew the species. They didn't realize it was poisonous until their cat vomited it up and they looked on the internet. And about 45 to 50% of cat owners didn't know it was poisonous. And this was 4 years ago.
Yeah, and you know, we would think the message would be out, right?
So this is a failure of veterinary professionals to get that information out. So it's any kind of plant material.
I'd like to get florists online with this too. Wouldn't it be nice if lilies, you know, bouquets?
There's a warning sign on
I had a
that.
sticker
No
on
cats.
them. You know, that I think could go a long way.
It only takes one class action lawsuit. We can do it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But that is a good one to tackle because it takes very little of a lily.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? It takes very little to make it toxic to a cat.
No, that's amazing. So let's switch over another topic. The amazing work you do with VetGirl.
How did that start?
So...
Because it's not like you had nothing to do.
Yes. Just add it on. You know.
Well, in 2003, I was studying for my emergency critical care boards. And like I mentioned before, I was not a good test taker. So I was studying 13 hours a day and wanted someone to read me a journal article through my Walkman while I was running with my dog or hiking with my dog just for a break.
Yeah.
And there was no technology like that at that time. And when I sat for my toxicology boards in 2011, I felt the same way. Why isn't there technology where someone can read me a toxicology article or a book chapter? And that's when I reached out to Garrett Pachtinger, a fellow criticalist, in 2011 and told him the idea of VetGirl. And I had modeled it and named it that after my favorite podcast, Grammar Girl, which are 5 to 10 minute podcasts on grammar, like effect versus effect, semicolon versus colon. And Grammar Girl then spun off to Money Girl, and
I did not know that.
a couple of other podcasts out there. So that's why we named it that. And so we started the company in 2012, released it to the veterinary public in July of 2013. So it's only about 5.5 years old.
Oh my God.
And so we...
And give some stats how it is now, because it's quite amazing.
Sure, it's been really exciting. We feel so well supported by the veterinary community. But we are now the #1 online veterinary continuing education platform out there. We've released podcasts for the past 5.5 years, and we're honored to say we've had over 2.1 million downloads in those 5 years.
Wow.
And that was just on iOS devices.
Not even
Stitcher or Android devices. And it's been really fun. Since when we first started in 2013, we had 12 hours of CE a year. And then the next year was 20 hours of race-approved webinars a year. And we're excited in 2019, not only did we add our traditional small animal track, but we added a large animal track, a leadership track, a veterinary technician track, and now we offer 100 hours plus of CE a year that you can watch from the comforts of home.
That is just amazing.
Awesome.
So it's been fun.
Awesome.
That is just amazing. And you do a conference now? We have?
do.
Yeah.
So
and it was amazing. I just have to say, it was amazing.
Thank you.
Everything she touches is gold.
No.
This was... No, truly. It was one of the best conferences I've been
Thank
to.
you.
All I've done is seen the pictures, but it looked amazing.
Thank you.
And I was thinking, so the Mall of America, and it's like, and I have to walk through all this. But it was awesome.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Thanks. We, our mojo is online CE, but
So was it a little scary?
It was scary, but we also wanted to create a boutique veterinary experience as a way of giving back to our fan base. And this was for our most rabid fans who were, following us from the beginning. Exactly.
Like Jolle.
And so we have a huge Facebook following. We're at over 170,000 organic likes. Our fans, our Instagram's almost 70,000 people, and we've never paid for any advertising on Instagram. We paid $250 for our initial Facebook group just to get up to 1,000 people, and then since then. So it's been so incredible to see grow, and I feel really blessed.
Well, it shows you that you are onto something.
Thanks,
I think you're onto something.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that technology has enabled us to help people learn in different ways.
Absolutely.
Isn't this true? Because we're, as you say, you're a good example. It's nothing to do with intelligence. It's just to do with your skill set.
And resources.
Right. Absolutely. So one of the other things that I love about companies like yours in technology is that people who are in countries where it's harder to access education now actually can access quality education.
Yeah, and that's what I love too.
That's amazing to me.
Our podcasts have been downloaded in 170 countries, and our podcasts are free. And they used to be locked to a subscription. So we just released them 3 years ago, but we've had people from Malaysia to Egypt to Afghanistan come up to us and say, thanks for the podcast. And so each podcast, as you know, is so much work. A lot of ours are clinical vignettes of journal articles. And so, I always tell people each podcast, even though it's only 10 minutes to 20 minutes, can be 3 to 4 hours of work. So
absolutely.
Definitely a labor of love. So kudos to you guys for what you're doing with Purr Podcast.
And it's interesting that we started because we were like, there's nothing there for
just cats.
Talking about cats. And so it has been a roller coaster. It takes a lot of time, but it's also a labor of love because this is my favorite part of the day.
Yeah, of what we do. This is really fun.
At 10 p.m., I'm like, now I can do my podcast thing. So, or in the plane, I'm playing with, because I'm, we all have really busy jobs, and you do this as a passion that's in there. And the other thing that I think is so amazing is the family of friends that surround these kind of things that are on the edge. We call it for fun Animal Farm, and the people that are there, they all have the same passion in different spaces, but it's just wonderful.
And I always say our personalities as specialists, as veterinarians, is we're workaholics. But I always say, and my husband knows this too, I call it being a workaholic. If it brings you joy, that's what you should do.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to try that on my husband.
And if it doesn't bring you joy, then you shouldn't do it, right? But if it makes you happy, it's something you're passionate about, stay with it.
I think that's a really good message to veterinarians too, because maybe it's not podcasting, right? But maybe there's something in the veterinary world that would bring you joy. I know for a lot of people, it's like volunteering at the shelter. It's something. So a lot of my team volunteer at our local shelter. And they'll do a spay-a-thon or something like that. Or they'll get involved with an adoption group that. So it's kind of in your world, but it's a really different part of your world, right? So I think it's important to look for those opportunities that really do feed your passion.
All right, this was a great podcast.
Thanks.
And
so
for the first one, it's I'm super excited that in 2 weeks we'll have the next one.
Yes, because we just can't have enough of you.
I know. That's exactly it. So thank you so much for this one.
Of course, thank you so much.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
The opinions of this podcast are those by Dr. Susan Little and Dr. Jolle Kirpenstein. Veterinary medicine is a complex profession, and often there are multiple diagnostic and therapeutic options for different disease processes. If you're a pet owner with questions, please go to your local veterinarian. If you're a veterinary professional, ask your questions on our Instagram page @Purr Podcast. Dr. Susan Little is a feline medicine specialist with 2 cat-only hospitals in Ottawa, Canada. She is best known as an international speaker and as the author and editor of 2 textbooks, The Cat, Clinical Medicine and Management, and August, Consultations in Feline Internal Medicine. Along with 3 cats, she also admits to owning 2 dogs, and you can follow her on social media with the handle @CatVetSusan. Dr. Jolle Kirpenstein is a diplomat of the American and European College of Veterinary Surgeons and a big cat fan. His specialties range from surgical oncology and reconstruction reconstruction to minimally invasive surgery. He is the author of 2 textbooks on basic and reconstructive surgery. Did you know he was allergic to cats? Jolle works currently at Hill's Pet Nutrition. You can follow him on social media with the handle @GBETSX.